If I had to use one word to describe the book job, I would pick the word dense. There is so much going on in this episode. Let's take inventory for a second. It's a genre parody containing a collection of secondary characters, 2 brand new guest stars, an opening set piece, a satire of the publishing industry, a subplot about Lisa, and 2 separate heists with their own complications and betrayals. No wonder this episode is so long. It literally has no opening sequence after the clouds, and then extends like 30 seconds into the credits. To put it into context, Camp Krusty from Season 4 has 20 minutes and 17 seconds of content between its credits. Boy Scouts in the Hood, from Season 5, with its shortened opening, clocks in at 21:27. The book job is right there with it at 21 minutes and 28 seconds. As modern television episodes require more act breaks, and the show does longer and longer couch gags, this lengthy running time for the book job is a very, very good sign. There's clearly nothing they wanted to cut. The pacing of this thing is excellent, across the board. Sure, we get our opening set piece about dinosaurs, but it's extremely brief. They do a couple great observational jokes, and then quickly transition to our main story. They know this kind of plot is in the execution of the plan, not the intro stuff, so they keep Act 1 quick and straight to the point. We learn about the cynical marketing of the publishing industry, their ghostwriters, and fictional authors. We're ready to go. Combining a story about writing with an Ocean's 11 parody is utterly brilliant. They don't seem like they would work together, but they really do. The parody inserts a lot of action into what would be an otherwise very sedentary plot. They're going to assemble a team and then sit around and write a book. How is book planning going to be interesting to watch? I think that's the beauty of doing a heist parody here, that you can yada 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 some of the more boring and unimportant details and still hit the key character moments and the plot relevant stuff. Heist films are all about the planning and execution, and the decision of what you show versus what you skip can make or break it. The book job gets this right. It shows us the recruiting, the writing process, trying to sell the book, then the complication, the betrayal, and their showdown. Actually typing out the chapters, formatting and printing their draft, we can montage. Even the actual heist in Act 3, we can montage. The nuts and bolts of the break-in isn't really important when it comes down to it. Also, I think it's just hilarious to do a heist parody and then yada 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 through the actual heist. I mean, who does that? The parody fits in well with the existing rules of The Simpsons too. I think it's an improvement on what they attempted in 24 minutes. Despite watching 8 seasons of 24, I never got into that episode because it was too out of universe for me. They were fitting a square peg into a round hole. This concept does stretch characterization a bit, but it mostly fits within the reality of the show. I think the book job would have already been a fine episode if it was just a fun heist send-up. However, this episode also says a lot about the various writing processes and the whole art versus commerce debate. They split the second act into 2 parts. 1, Homer's crew doing a collaborative writing effort, and 2, Lisa attempting to write a novel all by herself. We get that contrast between both approaches, showing the positives and negatives of each. Now, I create content for YouTube, obviously, and I write all my videos myself, so I relate much more to the challenges Lisa faces here. And I can confirm that this portrayal is extremely, extremely well observed. It is so easy to procrastinate from starting a new writing task, especially if you're not sure what your beginning point is. My output would probably be about 50% higher if I didn't loaf around relentlessly. I really like Lisa's characterization in this one. She gets a lot of different looks. We get the ethical and depressed version, then her trying really hard and failing miserably, then rebounding to being sneaky and clever, relapsing to ethical and depressed again, and then rebounding to sneaky and clever. You can tell the issues really pull at her, but she's not rigid enough to be a total stick in the mud. They integrate her well into the existing storyline. I bet in the sequel to the book job, there will be a heist centered around the fact that Lisa sounds a lot like Yardley Smith. The episode avoids becoming too moralistic, avoiding taking the stance that only completely passion-driven auteurs can create anything interesting. I don't think that episode needs to be created. We all inherently understand that method can be successful. The book job presents a case for how long and arduous it can be to write something all by oneself. Think about how much Game of Thrones fans have been waiting around for George R.R. Martin. It dares to suggest that, hey, Maybe a group of people working together could make something interesting. Yay, teamwork. The Simpsons is notorious for having episodes be revised and punched up in its writing room. Collaborative writing has certainly been a good thing for the show. You think Conan O'Brien wrote all the jokes in Homer Goes to College? Come on. Seeing Homer and Skinner and Patty all brainstorm ideas together is compelling, seeing the visual ideas transform and come together. There's a really nice balance between Homer's crew being total mercenaries and them still trying to do a good job. The episode would be so much worse if they were just like, we want to make money, let's just crap out some garbage book we don't even care about. It's much more interesting and realistic for the group to become attached to their book and develop some pride as authors. The episode goes for the old plot trick of having the characters succeed, and then question exactly what it was they actually wanted. Inserting this scene right here was extremely smart, where the crew completes their book and applauds their effort. Without this scene, the characters' later defensiveness wouldn't make much sense. This transformation is still pretty quick, admittedly, but we all understand human nature enough to get why they reacted this way. There is a bit of a double standard here. The problem with giving us that mercenary point of view is that we also get why the publisher changes the characters from trolls to vampires. The group wrote this book because they wanted money. This guy bought the book because he wanted money. I mean, if Homer is trying to maximize the likelihood of selling his book, shouldn't the publisher maximize the likelihood of selling copies? To be clear, I don't agree with what the publisher did here. There is obviously artistic intent and value in the novel itself. And changing it is, frankly, a dick move. That's business. The book job feels a bit smarter in that they give us all the different sides of the issue and still steers us toward rooting for Team Homer. Really, a lot of these heist films come down to the fact that we just like the protagonist more than the villain. It's a game after all, we're just picking who we like. The guest stars are absolutely fantastic. Neil Gaiman delivers a wonderfully self-deprecating performance here. The show was smart to understand that bringing in this author would overshadow everything, so they instead just let Moe beat him up for most of it. Just sit there and be a fun presence until the final reveal. And obviously, if you're going for an Ocean's 11 parody, you gotta get Andy Garcia to play the bad guy. This is basically just the Terry Benedict performance again, but I ain't complaining. He delivers his jokes so straight, so deadpan, it makes them at least 3 times funnier. Andy Garcia is great. Now, I haven't really talked much about the stylistic choices here, and the heist parody aspect, partially because its success is so dependent on its ending. In general, the book job absolutely nails the aesthetic and conventions of the genre. Anyone who's seen Ocean's 11 will get what they're going for here. The use of montages, the jazzy musical selections, the shoutouts, the deadpan dialogue deliveries. This is probably the flattest conversation Homer and Bart has ever had. They execute all the recruiting scenes correctly, just a quick little introduction, a funny motivational joke, and then off to somewhere else. Really snappy and straight to the point. Even their costume design is dead on, perfecting that professional casual look that these rogues always seem to have. Bart is totally the Brad Pitt, just look at that shirt. Surprised he's not eating something in every scene. Now, these little transitional shots are not typical of these films. Soderbergh does not use the same musical cue and framing for every segment. But given the short runtime for TV, this works as a nice solution. Sometimes you just have to use shorthand to fit everything in. They also go for the whole Kansas City thing, one too many times for my tastes. They're correct in that these films like to mention some random backstory we never saw. They just don't usually make them important to character motivations, or even comment on them again. They could probably lose the second name drop and keep the first and last ones, in my opinion. Again, very minor note. My main point of contention with this parody is the ending fake-out. If you're going for an elaborate Ocean's 11 parody, one of the most important things you need to do is hide one crucial component of the plan from the audience. Give us one final blindside at the end. Or, to quote Mr. Jeff Winger from Community, "The best part of the plan is that at a certain point it will look like the plan is failing, but that's when it will turn out that the failing plan was all part of the plan." The book job sorta goes for this dynamic, but is slightly less organized than its source material. Lisa does indeed blindside us by making her own separate plan, on top of the group's plan. However, I would argue that this is slightly less satisfying because Homer's not in on it. It's clear that the group thinks they failed, and Lisa's USB swap was not planned by them. Maybe this ending would be better if Homer and Lisa worked together. There are definite pros and cons of both versions. One could argue that the Ocean's movies are unrealistic, and that the crew makes these elaborate layered plans that are dependent on knowing what everyone will do in the future. And Homer is, frankly, no Danny Ocean. But you could also argue that if you're going for this parody, the rules dictate that the actual secret plan of the group be successful in the end. That's just how the genre works. I would personally like it better if Lisa planned this with them, but even still, given how pathetic she is in the rest of the story, I guess it's nice she gets the win in the end. It was a close call, but she made it. Oh, wait a minute. Actually, Neil Gaiman got the win. And believe me, this is not a dream. And the best part is, he doesn't even know how to read. Now, I would always be inclined to like the book job, just because I'm a big fan of the Ocean's movies. I doubt this is very surprising to anyone who follows this channel, given my editing style, my musical intros, and my general George Clooney-esque dreaminess. Even if you're not into all this stuff, I think there's so much packed into the episode that most everyone will get something out of it. If you haven't seen this one, I recommend checking it out. The book job is one of the real hidden gems of the modern era.